The rain fell like sorrow from the heavens, not the gentle rain that farmers pray for, not the soft drizzle that makes children dance in the streets. No, this was the kind of rain that remembered old wounds. Thunder rolled across the dark skies above the village of Uganda, shaking the ancient trees that stood like silent guardians around the land. The muddy roads glistened beneath flashes of lightning, while frightened goats huddled beneath wooden shelters. And there, in the middle of the storm, a man knelt in the mud. His clothes were soaked through to his bones. His face was hollow, not with age but with pain. The kind of pain that doesn't sleep. The kind that follows you into dreams and wakes you up screaming in silence. His trembling hands pressed against the iron gates of the most magnificent compound in the village. Golden lanterns glowed warmly from carved balconies inside. Luxury vehicles lined the courtyard like sleeping beasts. Servants moved quietly beneath covered walkways, carrying trays of food and fine wine. This was not a home, this was a palace. And the woman who owned it was the same poor girl he had thrown away like garbage 10 years ago. A villager whispered from beneath a nearby umbrella, her voice trembling, not from cold, but from disbelief. Tunde, leave before the guards throw you out again. But Tunde did not move. Rain streamed down his face like tears. Except he was crying. He had been crying for weeks now, months perhaps. He had lost count. He lifted his shaking voice toward the brightly lit mansion. Amina, his voice cracked like dry wood. Please, forgive me. The guards beside the gate exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had seen many beggars at this gate, but never a man who once owned half the village. Never a man who once walked with chiefs and elders. Never a man whose pride had crumbled so completely that he now ate dirt just to be noticed. Inside the compound, behind a large upstairs window framed with carved mahogany, Amina stood silently in white clothing. Her fingers rested against the cold glass. Her eyes trembled. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating her face for one brutal second. She was not angry. She was not triumphant. She was remembering. And suddenly, the world tilted backward. 10 years earlier, before the wealth, before the heartbreak, before regret had carved its name into Tunde's chest like a curse written in fire. The village of Uganda was beautiful in those days. Morning sunlight spilled across green farmlands like melted honey. Birds danced above tall palm trees. Women sang folk songs beside the river, their voices rising and falling like the water itself. Children chased one another through dusty paths, their laughter so pure it could almost make you believe the world was kind. But not everyone in Uganda lived happily. At the farthest edge, where the road turned to thorns and hope grew thin, stood a tiny mud house with a leaking roof. That was where Amina lived with her grandmother, Mama Sade. The old woman sold herbs in the market, bitter leaves, wild ginger, roots that could cure fevers that doctors had given up on. She was respected, yes, but respected people can still be poor, and poverty in Uganda was not invisible. It wore rags, it walked slowly, it learned to smile when it wanted to cry. Amina fetched water before sunrise. She farmed cassava until her hands bled. She gathered medicinal plants from the forest, walking miles through paths where snakes slept, and men with bad intentions sometimes wandered. Though poverty clung to her life like stubborn dust that no amount of washing could remove, Amina carried herself with quiet grace. She was beautiful in a way that made people pause without understanding why. Her smile was soft, like the first rain after a long dry season. Her eyes carried kindness, not the fake kind, not the kind that expects something in return. And her heart was pure. Every morning, Before the rooster finished its first cry, she walked barefoot to the river, carrying clay pots balanced on her head. Her feet knew every stone, every root, every place where the path became slippery, and every morning, she secretly hoped to see him. Tunde, the son of Chief Balogun, the richest man in Uganda. Tunde was everything the village admired: tall, handsome, educated in the city. He spoke English with an accent that made local girls fan themselves. He wore shoes that had never seen mud. Whenever he passed by, whispers followed him like loyal dogs. There he goes, Chief's son. He will become a great man someday. Even the elders praised him. They said his future was written in gold, but Tunde rarely noticed anyone except Amina. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon like a dying ember, Amina sat quietly beside the river, washing clothes. The water was cool. The crickets were beginning their nightly song. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Not hurried footsteps, not suspicious footsteps, footsteps that knew where they were going. "You always come here alone," a voice said softly. She turned quickly, startled, then smiled shyly. "And you always find me." Tunde sat beside her beneath the great Iroko tree, a tree so old that the elders said their grandfathers' grandfathers had played beneath its shade. For a while, neither of them spoke. The river flowed gently between smooth stones. The moonlight began painting silver lines across the water. Then Tunde pointed toward the moon's reflection, dancing like a spirit across the surface. "One day," he said quietly, "I will leave this village and become successful." Amina lowered her eyes. "I know. And when I return," he turned toward her with a smile that could have melted stone, "I will marry you." Amina's heart nearly stopped. "Tunde, I mean it." The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying the scent of night flowers. She smiled through nervous laughter, her cheeks warm despite the cool evening air. In that moment, she believed him completely. And why wouldn't she? She was young, she was in love. She had not yet learned that some promises are made of paper, beautiful to hold, but helpless against the rain. But love does not always survive ambition. It is a cruel truth, but a truth nonetheless. Years passed. Tunde left for the city to continue his education. At first, he wrote letters to Amina, beautiful letters, the kind that village postmen remembered for years. He told her about city lights that never went out, about universities with libraries bigger than the entire market of Uganda, about expensive cars that moved without horses, about dreams so large they barely fit on the paper, and at the bottom of every letter, he wrote the same three words: "Wait for me." So she waited, even when villagers mocked her openly. A poor girl dreaming of marrying Chief Balogun's son, she has lost her mind completely. Look at her, carrying water like a servant, dreaming like a queen. Women laughed behind her back, men shook their heads, even children repeated the gossip they heard from their parents. But Amina did not waver. She kept his letters beneath her pillow. She read them so many times that the paper grew soft like cloth. She memorized every word, every promise, every signature, because she believed in love the way some people believe in God, without evidence, without reassurance, without anything except a stubborn hope that refuses to die. But slowly, the letters stopped coming. At first, she told herself he was busy: exams, travel, family matters. Then weeks became months, months became a year, and when Tunde finally returned to Uganda after many years, something inside him had changed. The city had poisoned his heart with pride. Not the good kind of pride, the kind that comes from honest work and earned respect. No, this was the ugly pride, the one that looks at poverty and feels disgust instead of compassion, the one that forgets where it came from. He now wore expensive suits that cost more than most villagers earned in a year. He spoke with arrogance, his sentences sharp and dismissive. He looked at poverty, his village's poverty, and felt shame instead of love, especially Amina's poverty. One afternoon, Chief Balogun called his son into his large compound. The old chief sat on a carved wooden throne, his walking stick tapping against the floor like a heartbeat. "You must stop associating with that poor girl," the chief warned, his voice cold as river stones in Harmattan. Tunde remained silent. "You are meant for greatness. You are meant for wealth. You will marry a wealthy woman from a respected family." "But father," no arguments. The old chief slammed his walking stick against the floor so hard that dust rose from the cracks. "Love without wealth is suffering. Do you understand me? Suffering." Those words buried themselves deep inside Tunde's heart, not like seeds, but like poison. And from that day, he began avoiding Amina. He crossed the road when he saw her coming. He pretended not to hear when she called his name. He stopped visiting the river altogether. Amina was confused at first, then hurt, then broken, but she still hoped. She always hoped. The annual Moonlight Festival arrived weeks later. It was the grandest celebration in Uganda. Drums thundered through the village square like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Dancers wore colorful beads that clicked and shimmered with every movement. Torches lit the night with golden fire, casting long shadows that danced alongside the living. Everyone gathered beneath the stars, laughing, eating, celebrating life. But Amina's hands trembled nervously beneath her wrapper, because hidden inside a small cloth bundle was a handmade gift for Tunde, a carved wooden bracelet. Everyone gathered beneath the stars, laughing, eating, celebrating life. But Amina's hands trembled nervously beneath her wrapper, because hidden inside a small cloth bundle was a handmade gift for Tunde, a carved wooden bracelet. She had spent weeks making it. She had walked miles into the forest to find the right wood, strong enough to last, soft enough to carve. She had used her grandmother's old knife, working late into the nights when the village slept. Every curve, every symbol, every groove carved with love. Mama said he noticed her fear. The old woman touched her granddaughter's cheek with a hand that had known hardship and still chosen tenderness. "Go to him," she whispered gently. "Love should never hide. If he rejects you, at least you will know. But if you never go, you will spend your whole life wondering." Amina took a deep breath. Then she walked slowly toward the center of the festival. Villagers watched curiously. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. She actually came. Does she think she belongs there? Look at her clothes. Look at her feet. Amina ignored them. Her heart pounded painfully against her ribs as she stopped before Tunde. He stood among wealthy guests beside Zainab, the beautiful daughter of another rich chief. Zainab wore gold. Zainab wore silk. Zainab looked at Amina the way a cat looks at a mouse, with amusement and cruelty. But Amina kept her eyes on Tunde. "I made this for you," she said softly, offering the bracelet with both hands. "The way you offer something sacred, for one brief moment." Tunde almost accepted it. He almost remembered the river, the promises, the girl he once loved. But then he noticed the eyes watching him, the wealthy guests, Zainab, his father, and fear poisoned him again. Tunde stepped backward. His voice turned cold, colder than Amina had ever heard. "Amina." The entire festival grew silent. Even the drums seemed to hold their breath. "A poor village girl can never be my wife." The words hit like thunder. Gasps erupted across the square. Hands flew to mouths. Eyes widened. Amina froze. The bracelet slipped from her fingers. It fell slowly, almost gracefully, and landed in the dust. Then laughter began. Not kind laughter, not embarrassed laughter, cruel laughter, sharp laughter, humiliating laughter. Zainab laughed the loudest. Tunde looked away. He could not meet her eyes. But he did not stop the laughter either. His silence was its own betrayal. Amina's lips trembled. Tears filled her eyes. Slowly, not the fast tears of anger, but the slow, deep tears of a heart cracking open. Mama Sade rushed forward from the crowd, pushing through the mockers, and held her granddaughter tightly. But the laughter continued, and in the middle of drums, dancing, and celebration, Amina's heart shattered completely. That same night, rain began falling heavily across the village. Not the gentle rain of morning, the angry rain of midnight. Amina sat alone beside the river, the same river where love had once been promised, crying silently. The rain hid her tears, or perhaps the rain was her tears. Then an old voice spoke behind her. The river remembers every wound. She turned suddenly. An old Babalawo, a traditional priest, a man whose eyes had seen things that could not be explained, stood beneath the rain holding a carved staff. His white beard glistened with water. His robes were soaked, but he did not shiver. "You were humiliated tonight," he said calmly, "but destiny has not abandoned you." Amina wiped her tears painfully. "What destiny?" The old man stepped closer. His voice was low, but it carried like thunder. "One day, those who mocked you will drink from your hands." Lightning flashed across the river, illuminating his face for one brief second. The same people who rejected you will pray for your return. The same people who laughed at your poverty will beg for your mercy. Amina stared at him silently. "How?" The old man smiled, not a happy smile, but a knowing one. "The universe does not forget kindness, child, and it does not forgive cruelty without payment." Then he disappeared into the storm like smoke. Amina sat alone for a long time, watching the rain hit the river. Before dawn, she and Mama Sede left Uganda forever, without goodbye, without revenge, without looking back. And for years, nobody heard from them again, but the old Babalawo had spoken the truth. Amina and her grandmother found their way to the city. At first, they slept on cardboard in crowded markets. They ate what others threw away. They survived on nothing but hope and stubbornness. But Mama Sade knew herbs, and Amina learned quickly. Within 2 years, they opened a small shop selling traditional medicines. Within 5 years, that shop became a store. Within 7 years, that store became a chain. And within 10 years, Amina Okafor, the poor village girl who had been mocked in the dust, became one of the wealthiest women in the region. She built hospitals. She built schools. She built water systems for villages that had never known clean water. But she never returned to Uganda. Not until the memory stopped hurting. Not until she was ready. Meanwhile, life had humbled Tunde brutally. Chief Balogun died after a long illness, a sickness that no amount of money could stop. The family business collapsed within months. Bad investments, bad debts, bad decisions made by proud men who refused to listen to advice. Debt swallowed everything they owned, the compound, the cars, the respect. Worst of all, Zainab abandoned him. She left without a word, taking the remaining gold and jewelry. She married a richer man in another city and never looked back. The same people who once praised Tunde now mocked him behind his back. He thought wealth would last forever. Pride destroyed him. Look at him now, exactly where he belongs. Broken, ashamed, and hollow, Tunde returned to Uganda with nothing, no power, no respect, no happiness, only regret. He lived in a small room behind the market. He worked odd jobs. He walked with his head lowered, unable to meet the eyes of those who once bowed to him. Then, strange news spread across the village. A wealthy woman had arrived from the city. She was building a hospital, the first real hospital Uganda had ever seen. She was building a school, with a library, with computers, with hope. She was building clean water systems, pipes that would bring fresh water to every home. Nobody knew who she was, but people spoke about her kindness with amazement. She treats villagers for free. She feeds widows every Thursday. She restored the old marketplace, gave loans to poor traders. Tunde heard the stories, but he did not care. He had stopped caring about anything except survival, until one afternoon. He joined the crowd gathered near the newly built hospital. Luxury vehicles rolled slowly into the compound, the kind of vehicles that chiefs could only dream of. Then the car door opened, and time stopped. Pause for effect. Amina stepped out gracefully. Elegant white clothing flowed around her like light. Gold earrings shimmered softly against her dark skin. Confidence radiated from her presence. Not the fake confidence of arrogance, but the real confidence of someone who had walked through fire and emerged unburned. But her eyes still carried the same quiet gentleness from 10 years ago. The crowd gasped loudly. "It's Amina!" The poor girl? Impossible. That cannot be the same girl who fetched water barefoot. Tunde felt his knees weaken. The world around him blurred. Sounds became distant. Faces became ghosts. This powerful woman, this healer, this builder, this queen of mercy, was the same girl he had humiliated in front of the entire village. The same girl whose bracelet he had let fall into the dust. The same girl he had called a poor village girl who can never be my wife. Amina's eyes finally met his. For one painful second, one endless agonizing second, neither of them moved. Then she looked away and continued walking, as if he were a stranger, as if he were nothing, as if their history had been erased from the earth. And somehow, that hurt far worse than hatred. Days passed. Tunde could not sleep. Everywhere he turned, memories haunted him. The river, the bracelet, the festival, her tears, his cruelty, his cowardice, his pride. He remembered every cruel word he had spoken, every laugh he had not stopped, every moment he had chosen approval over love, and regret slowly began eating him alive, not like hunger, but like poison. One evening, he finally gathered the courage to visit her mansion. The guards blocked him immediately. "Madame Amina does not wish to see you." But he kept returning, again and again and again, sometimes in rain, sometimes beneath burning sun, sometimes late at night, when he hoped shame would be harder to see. Villagers watched and whispered, "Look at him now, the proud son of Chief Balogun, begging at a poor girl's gate." Life has a strange way of teaching lessons. Until one evening, Amina finally agreed to meet him. She sat quietly in her garden beneath glowing lanterns. Night insects hummed softly around them. The air smelled of jasmine and earth. Tunde entered slowly, barely able to raise his eyes. He looked small. He looked old. He looked exactly like a man who had lost everything, including himself. "You look well," he whispered. Amina smiled faintly, not warmly but not cruelly either. "And you look tired." Pain filled the silence between them, thick, heavy, suffocating. Finally, Tunde spoke. "I came to apologize." Amina looked away toward the moonlight. 10 years too late. His voice cracked. "I was young, foolish. I didn't know." "No," she said softly, cutting him off. "You were ashamed of me." The words pierced him deeply. Tunde lowered his head. "I loved you." Amina laughed painfully, the kind of laugh that holds tears inside. Love does not humiliate people publicly, Tunde. Love does not stand silent while the crowd mocks. Love does not throw away a gift carved by
Silence
hands that
returned.
Heavy silence. Then she stood slowly. "The wound you gave me never truly healed, Tunde. It's scarred, but scars still hurt when the weather changes." And she walked away, leaving him alone beneath the lantern light. But destiny was not finished with them. Weeks later, a deadly sickness spread through Uganda. Children collapsed with fever. Elders coughed blood. Fear consumed the village like wildfire in Harmattan. Panic spread everywhere. And once again, The villagers turned to Amina. Day and night, she treated the sick tirelessly, using both modern medicine and the traditional healing knowledge her grandmother had taught her. She slept 2 hours a night. She ate standing up. She held dying children and wept when she could not save them. Even when exhausted, she refused to rest. Tunde watched her quietly one night as she treated a crying child, her hands gentle despite her fatigue, her voice soft despite her exhaustion. That was when he finally understood. True greatness was not wealth. It was not power. It was not the admiration of chiefs. True greatness was kindness. Without hesitation, he began helping her. He carried medicine boxes through the rain. He transported sick villagers on his back when there were no vehicles. He worked without sleep, without thanks, without recognition. Some villagers mocked him. He is only helping because he wants her back. A hungry dog returns to where the food is. But slowly, Amina began noticing his sincerity. He did not flirt. He did not beg. He did not remind her of the past. He simply served. Then disaster struck again. A violent storm flooded part of the village one terrible night. The river rose like an angry god, swallowing homes near its banks. Children became trapped inside collapsing buildings. Without thinking, without a single moment of hesitation, Tunde rushed into the floodwaters. "Tunde!" Amina screamed from the shore, but he kept going. Rain crashed violently around him. The water pulled at his legs, hungry and merciless. He carried frightened children through dangerous currents, one by one, until his arms gave out. At one point, the river nearly swept him away completely. He disappeared beneath the water for so long that the crowd gasped. Then his hand emerged, then his head, then the child he had protected with his own body. He survived, barely, and for the first time in many years, Amina saw the man she once loved, not the proud, arrogant, rich man, not the coward who had stood silent while she was mocked, but the kind-hearted boy beneath the Iroko tree, the one who had pointed at the moon and promised forever. Days later, after the storm ended and the waters retreated, Amina walked quietly to the riverside alone, the same riverside where everything had once begun, the same stones, the same trees, the same moonlight was dancing across the water like spirits at play. Then footsteps approached behind her. She did not turn. She already knew who it was. Tunde stopped several feet away. His clothes were still damp. His face carried the weight of everything he had lost and everything he had learned. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Tunde dropped slowly to his knees, exactly where they once sat as children. Tears filled his eyes, not the performative tears of a man who wanted something, but the real tears of a man who had seen himself clearly for the first time and been horrified. "I rejected you because I worshipped wealth," he whispered painfully. "I thought money made a man worthy. I thought status made love valuable. I was wrong about everything." He paused, swallowing against the lump in his throat. "Losing everything taught me the true meaning of love. Love is not possession. Love is not pride. Love is showing up in the rain, in the mud, in the humiliation. Love is serving when nobody is watching." Amina's lips trembled. "I hurt you," he continued. "I humiliated you. I broke something that never should have been touched, and I will regret it for the rest of my life, not because I am kneeling here, but because I cannot undo what I did." The river flowed gently beside them, as it always had, as it always would. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. "I know that, but if there is even one small place left for me in your heart, I will spend the rest of my life protecting it. Not because I want your money, not because I want your status, but because you are the only person who ever saw me, really saw me, and loved me anyway." Amina began crying silently. Years of pain, loneliness, love, longing, betrayal, healing, all of it crashing together at once, like waves against a shore that had been waiting for this storm. "You broke me," she whispered. Tunde closed his eyes painfully. "I know." Amina stared at the river, trembling. Then, slowly, very slowly, she stepped closer and placed her hand gently against his face. His eyes opened in shock. "I tried to stop loving you," she whispered through tears. "I told myself you were dead. I told myself the boy I loved never existed. But my heart refused to forget." Tunde looked up at her in disbelief. The moonlight reflected in her tear-filled eyes, and there beside the river, where love was born and died and was born again, Amina finally forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because she refused to let his cruelty shape the rest of her life. Months later, drums echoed joyfully throughout Uganda once again, but this time, nobody laughed at Amina. The entire village gathered beneath golden lanterns to celebrate her wedding to Tunde. Women danced in swirling colors. Children sang songs that would be sung for generations. Elders smiled proudly, nodding at the strange, beautiful justice of life. And as Amina walked beside the man who once rejected her, her hand in his, her head high, her heart full, villagers whispered about destiny, about karma, about time, about love, because life had taught them all a lesson they would never forget. Never mock humble beginnings, because time has a way of humbling the proud and lifting the rejected. And somewhere beyond the celebration, standing silently beneath the ancient trees, the old Babalawo watched the wedding from afar. A small smile crossed his weathered face. He tapped his carved staff once against the earth. Then he disappeared into the night wind once again, as if he had never been there at all, as if he were never needed in the first place. Because some lessons teach themselves. The river still flows through Uganda. The Iroko tree still stands. And every evening when the moon rises and paints silver lines across the water, two people walk to the riverside together, not because they have forgotten the past, but because they have chosen the future. And that is the greatest power of all.
Thank you for watching.